All right. Hello again. This is Chad Everett Broshears. I'm the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And today I'm talking about, or this episode is on why we become our partner's fears, or why our partners become our fears. Now, this is something that I've been very privileged to in my history. I've projected this onto people out of my own insecurities, as well as I've had these things projected onto me out of their insecurities in the relationship, mainly due to the fact that my relationships have been fairly immature, only by the basis of what a mature relationship can be. And I didn't know that at the time, so it was based solely in ignorance, of what mature relationships are. So I kind of had the concept of what a inherited relationship should be, which is the way that my parents behaved and what I've observed in my peers, uh, and what was most reflective of the type of relationships that I had experienced, as well as what I wanted to experience. So I was gathering data on how a relationship was supposed to behave, and then confirming while other people behaved in a very similar fashion that that's the way relationships are supposed to go. I'll tell you a truth about relationships. Now, this is a truth in relation with other people, so that there's every facet of human being involved in it, not just conceptual ideas or conceptual positions of relationships or beliefs in a partner. I've had many relationships where people loved the idea of me, but not loving me. And also vice versa. Throughout my youth, I've also had relationships where I loved the idea of the person, but not necessarily the person that I was with. Now, all of this is necessary to set up the framework, the groundwork necessary, so that we can speak about how projecting fears can cause our partner to become our fears, or to adopt our fear patterns. So in past relationships, I've behaved in many, many different ways. Uh, so I can get more clear on this. There's a lot of interesting observations that I've made and experienced in relationships. So, what a mature relationship looks like is, there's a series that I actually teach now, that I've gone through the School of Hard Knocks to learn it. And there's different value systems, and there's the you. So there's the program that I designed called Mastering the You in Relationships, which centers and solely focuses on you, introduces and well informs you, and starts the fundamental basis for becoming healthy selfish, and then producing more of a broader awareness to who you are to the world. So that's mastering the you in relationships. There's also the mastering you at work, and there's a lot of different things that are products that are available through the Human Manual, which is my company, and you'll find it through my website that will be launched on the 1st of November, and the products will be available on the 1st of November 2015. So, what is a healthy relationship? First off, is you have to understand a truth about relationships is that all relationships are agreements. That's it. They are completely 100% agreements. Now, most of the time, people go from relationship to relationship with inherited factors. There's no discussion about how the relationship is to go. There's only this idea that socially we know how relationships are supposed to behave. But most people do not like the confines of normal relationships or socially understood relationships. They do not understand the basis that a relationship is fully and 100% involved in agreements, 100% agreements. I agree that I'm going to be with you under these conditions, and these conditions persist of I will be solely with you and no other person sexually, or even to great depths of intimacy, it'll be just with you. Whatever your agreements are. But first, you need to know who you are before you can start creating agreements, because a lot of times most people do not have the ability to stand in their higher position, or to say that they're standing in what they wish to experience in life, meaning that they position themselves for becoming successful in the idea of what relationships are as success. Most people don't even know what that is. They just say, the right relationship's going to come along. They are at the effect of relationships when they have that position. I'm going to wait till the right person comes along. The truth is that anyone can be the right person, but that requires a maturity of yourself, so much so that you can assist other people in developing themselves towards what they wish to experience. I promise you that you do not want somebody who wants everything as you do. You want somebody with different variances. So there's always a contrast value that can bring new insight to the way life occurs for other people, which brings a great deal of bounty and beauty to our relationships. Now, this doesn't mean that all aspects need to be in conflict to outcome viewpoints, but it does mean that value is found in contrast. So most people have no awareness to this. They don't know how to conduct or create a responsible and mature relationship. So they go back and forth from one relationship to another. You can find out if you're in this cycle, if you've ever mentioned to yourself, I just can't believe I keep finding the same person or the same kind of people. The lowest common denominator in that factor is you, not the other people. The other people are just following along like you are, which is like a ping pong ball, just kind of bouncing around, and there's multiples of them on the table. So we just go through life collecting baggage, bad relationship experience to bad relationship experience, and then projecting those things onto our partner. Now, if you've been cheated on in the past multiple times, and being the cheating on being in the context of somebody sleeping with somebody else, that was a illegal act in your agreement, so it was against the agreement itself, then, whether it was spoken or not, maybe it was agreed upon that both people said, it's just you, I want you only in my life, blah, blah, blah. And then the person goes off and actually does the act. Now, have you been assassinating the relationship with consistent, insecure accusations? Now, this can very well happen, and I've experienced it myself. The more you put an idea into somebody's head, even if they have to defend against it, the more you put that idea into their head, the more they entertain the position. Now, if you're defending against the position, you're figuring out how to defend yourself in the position, but you're still nonetheless thinking about the position of having sex with someone else. Initially, whenever the excitement and chemistry is really high and you're overly consumed by this individual, or extremely consumed by this individual you're in the relationship with, and they have this insecurity that comes in that accuses them of cheating or sleeping with somebody else. Initially, in my experience and from my students that I've worked with and clientele, has been fairly like it's defensive in the position that I promise you, you're the only one I want to be with. I wouldn't do that to you. Like all of the values that are authentic, they're genuine. The person really doesn't want to be with somebody else. They're only, the insecurity for the other person's behavior and patterns that they've seen into relationships. And usually it occurs at about the same time frame in relationships. If it's not the same time frame, it's the behaviors or the way the person feels in the relationship. It's been going on for 3 months now. Things are just too good to be true. It must not be true. Let me put that into the relationship now. So you see that the more you accuse your partner of doing these things, or the more often that you present that idea, or the longer they entertain the defense against that idea, the more likely they are to entertain just the idea itself. If the person wears out, or you're having a disconnected moment in the relationship, say that times are a little hard, there's some things going on, there may be money or something like that, or not enough time together, or whatever it is, it's straining the relationship. It can start to affect the psyche of the individual entertaining the thought, or that has the thought playing in their mental playground. This is a method that causes an assassination attempt to the relationship. It's not really inborn on the individual necessarily, the person that's actually thinking it. It was pushed onto them, forced fed into that person's psyche, because they've consistently had to sit back in defense against the idea. Now, we've all had an experience at some point in time, or at least I know that I've had it multiple times, where I've done self-assessment when I've heard something from some people multiple times and in different types of people, not necessarily meaning that, maybe not in the intimate relationships of a boyfriend-girlfriend scenario, but maybe I've heard from a past partner, and then heard from, a couple of my friends, something very similar, like, Chad, you don't really listen well, right? Just as an example, I really don't hear that very often. I did in my youth, not very often even then by comparison to my peers, but yet I had heard that once or twice. But just as an example now, I might have, heard several things and then thought to myself, well, I better reflect on what's going on. Why am I being accused of this? Let me reflect on it. Maybe I did. Maybe I don't listen that well. Maybe I did step over the conversation or interrupt the person or whatever. It's the self-assessment value, so that you know who you're bringing to. Now, this is usually an involuntary self-assessment thing. It's not inborn, just sitting around one day without any outside or what we'll call deductive reasoning. There's no outside influence to make you want to look back at this and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I am not listening well. So it's usually this particular position in this example would be brought to your attention by somebody else. And then you look back at it and say, maybe I'm not listening all that well to people. Let me reassess this. You see, now if you've heard in a relationship multiple times from your partner, say over a couple of years span, that they don't trust you or they feel that you are, cheating, or that you might be having an affair or whatever, it positions yourself to, you could potentially act out of spite against your partner, or your partner could act out of spite against you, because you've got to the point of real low point in the relationship where there's a good deal of disconnect, and maybe now you're actually exchanging blows rather than kisses, right? Maybe now we're fighting with our partner more, or keeping a score on who's got the better point system against the other person. You see, now we're working on, how can I get back at them? How can I hurt them in ways I know will hurt them? So as a person continues to say, I believe you're going to cheat on me, that's telling the other person, if it ever gets to warfare in the relationship, what could be decent ammunition. Now, I'm not saying that all people are this way. Some people are this way, and you very well may find yourself being that person in the relationship, or being with a person like that in the relationship, where it's more of a game that if you hurt me, I will hurt you, rather than you've hurt me, but I want you to understand it, and I want us to grow through this or past this, because I'm committed to our relationship being this ideal outcome. But first and foremost, you have to understand that you need to understand what the relationship would look like as success, what a successful long-term relation would look like. Early stage relationship, what's considered successful, is probably more prevalent in people's understanding of relationships, but long-term is usually something that you may ask, like as I've asked people, they're like, oh, getting married, having kids. I'm like, okay, what else? Right? How many kids? How do you want your kids to be raised? What kind of education do you want your children to be exposed to? What kind of parental opportunities would you like to have? Would you want your parent or your other partner or your partner in the relationship to work with you in parenting or not? What kind of plan do you have for parenting? How do you discipline, or which ways will you discipline? What's agreeable for you and what's agreeable for your partner? You see, there's a lot of different things to look at whenever it comes to what you're looking for in a partner. So you may get into it and you may be on one side of a political arena and the other person may be on the other with different value systems. And you two just love each other to the extent, and we'll call this more lust. You lust for each other than more so than you really love each other. When you're lusting after somebody and you say that I love you, but it's really lust, then it's loving the idea of the person, not loving the person. It's lusting the person. So as you continue, if you get past that lusting phase where you're like, finally, yeah, she's attractive or he's attractive or whatever. And then it just gets to that, yeah, but we don't talk about politics. We don't talk about gay rights. We don't talk about, which by the way, it's not even gay rights. It's equality across the board. And it doesn't have to be gay. It can be anything. Equality, period. If you stand against equality, then you have a position to say, whatever. But if you stand for equality, then you have a position that everyone finds equality. Everyone is equal. But you may have these deviations between each other, these differential factors. Maybe one's a Republican, one's a Democrat, or an independent, or, whatever it may be, whatever other subgroups that can be out there. Maybe one person stands for, pro-life, the other one's, pro-choice. right? That's a subject that's going to be necessary to understand in the event that, there is a unwanted pregnancy, right? You'll have to understand these things because they will drive between you. How do you cope with loss, right? Because everybody's going to experience loss in their life. They're going to experience loss of jobs or loss of some sort of resource, loss of, freedom, loss of loved ones, friends, family, like all kinds of things, loss of even possibly loss of a child. You see, these are all very intentional factors for maturing ourselves. So if you don't understand these things, you're walking into a relationship ready to butt heads at some point in time, or just to completely unhitch your trailer, and just move on, or unhitch your wagon and move on prematurely, or to the other person's experience being very premature. What I'm talking about is being extremely responsible in a relationship. But in order to be extremely responsible is be responsible for yourself first and foremost, healthy, selfish. You need to understand what it is that you do not want to experience and what you do want to experience, and what your responsibility is for you to do in order to have that experience. So if you continue to accuse your partner of anything, whether it is a past action they're trying to get over that you were aware of but may not have experienced directly, or you did experience directly, but if you keep accusing them of it, it's easier to push them back into that particular profile to get them to behave the way that you're telling them that you don't want them to. You're indirectly telling them to behave that way. It just affects the psyche in such a way, because now you're basically gambling on whether or not your partner has that kind of mental fortitude to stay in this pattern that you tell them that you want them to be in, that they may have or may not have told you they want to be. So you see, with this, people have a habit of fighting as much as they can whatever behavior they don't want to react in or to be a part of. But ultimately, if you keep encouraging them directly or indirectly to do so, then it's likely that that will happen. There's many reasons for that, as I've discussed already. But I hope that this brings some insight to you on what can happen when you accuse your partner of doing something, or that you are accused of doing something that your partner doesn't want. You can easily slip into that particular type of fear. So you can become the fear that that person has towards this experience in the relationship. So how do we get past all of this? You develop yourself. You develop yourself with the intention of maturing and mastering who you are in the relationship. Once you get past that position, which takes time, you don't want to prematurely jump into something you're not ready for. Because if you're not fully mastering who you are as a person and what you want to experience in this life, that you solely on your own accord and merit, then if you step over that and you start putting that into the other person's responsibility, that's where disappointment sets in. I only can find out what it's like to be wealthy if my partner gets wealthy, or if we can make the wealth together, rather than being able to understand how to do it on your own, right? Then you're putting too much dependency on them, and it can strain the relationship. Now, if you want the other person to hold their own, then you need to know how to do yours, but you also need to know how to do yours in such a way that you know how to teach how to do that, right? Show through inspiration, show through example, show through conversation, show through education, but don't be attached to them doing it. Just make sure that you've provided them the opportunity to do it on their own terms, on their own time, and that you have the patience to continue to love them as they go through their growing pains. Now, if you don't have that kind of fortitude or wherewithal, then, every time you complain about the way a relationship's going, is just consider that you are the norm. You are the basic bitch, if you will. You're the person that complains regularly, that other people find agreement with. They find comfort in the complaint, but they are the ones that are subject to the way life happens, rather than being at cause for life, where you are actually making life happen by the terms you've set. All right. So by the way, even if you find yourself in the former of that statement, you're still setting your life up to be the way you still want it to go that way, because it's the way your character tells me it's truth. That's why you keep ending up in that position. You're not willing to grow, so therefore you're willing to stay complacent. You have become comfortable and attached to your suffering because you know how to deal with it. If you're not clear on what suffering is and how it's a choice, then that's the video. I made that video earlier. by all means, go ahead and look into it. So with all of that in closing, you choose your life, you choose your suffering, you choose your joys, you choose a lot of things. But if you believe somebody else has already written it out, or somebody else is leading you, and you have no choice but to just follow a path that somebody else has, you are at subject of life. You are subject to life rather than being at cause of life. So, or for your life. So with that, if you want more on this, by all means, comment below. Share this post if you like it. Share it if you don't like it. Share it, cause a conversation, see what your friends think. Please, by all means, comment yourself to give me feedback, what you think. And I look forward to the next video. Again, this is Chad Everett Brochures. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia and also the author of the Human Manual. All right. Well, with that, thank you guys very much. I look forward to our next video.